What's up, doll collectors, hobbyists, fabsome besties? I'm Toya, an adult doll collector. Welcome to my miniverse. Let's make something. We've been playing around with textures in the studio, mixing a little sand and paint and glue to make what I think looks like a street. And it's got me thinking, let's make a beach. I make a pool or beach every year, so I'm thinking this is our 2025 project. A few weeks back, I picked up this canvas from Five Below. It's a 2-pack that measures 16 by 20 inches. When I bought it, it was $5. Let's take one and some scraps of cardboard and build a small ramp or hill. I cut the cardboard to fit the canvas. I bend one end to make a small slope. I cut 1.5 in strips of cardboard, then cut one end to match the slope. Cut enough to support the project. Depending on the size of your beach, I would think 4 to 8 would work. I'm using 6. I begin gluing them onto the canvas. I'm using hot glue to attach them to the canvas. I added a piece to the back so we could just box it all in, then add the other strips, trimming as needed. Now that everything's glued down, it does look like that's a pretty big drop-off, but we're just gonna keep going. Let's glue the other piece of cardboard on top, and I'm just gonna allow it to go forward a little bit more to try to soften that curve. I cut and glue down more cardboard to fill in the gap. And now we have our slope. Let's add a little golden brown paint and brush on a thin coat and allow it to dry. Now the plan is to cover this whole thing in a glue sand mixture, then add some fake water using clear plastic from packaging. Well, that's the plan anyway. I'm not sure if this is going to work for our realistic beach. We're kind of just figuring it out as we go. Here are my sand options. One is more coarse and the other is more fine. I wasn't sure which one to use, so I did a little test on a scrap of cardboard. I mixed them with Mod Podge and allowed them to dry. This one has a lot of texture and a warmer color. This one's a lot smoother. I think I'm gonna go with this. Here is my test for the water, where I mix paint and Mod Podge, then use the straw to move it around. Similar to how people do that resin water effect. However, I think my white lines are a little too thick, so I'm gonna thin them out, and I might tint the water a light blue. Now let's give it a try. See what I did there? It kind of looks like the beach. In a bowl, I mix sand and Mod Podge, then mix them up. I'm using an old brush. I want it to kind of look like batter. I don't want it to be so watery that it just runs everywhere, but I don't want it to be so thick that I can't spread it. So this looks about right. I began applying it to the canvas. I'm using it to cover the seams and all of the cardboard, trying to smooth it out the best I can. I switched to a scrap of cardboard. I'm finding it a little easier to use to smooth things out. I guess we don't have to get it completely smooth because, you know, the beach does have little hills and valleys. Once covered, allow it to dry. Then we can start to see if we need to go in with another coat. But before I do that, since we know that drying time takes a while, let's cut the clear plastic from packaging to fit going across. I wanted to rest on the top of the ramp a little, then go straight out, so we're going to need to make some sides. I cut 2 more rectangles of clear plastic from packaging that are the height of the side, and we're going to just glue all this clear plastic together, making a little clear box. I used hot glue to connect the sides. I place it on top to see how it fits. It is dipping a little, so we might have to make something to help hold it up. I use a washable marker to give this edge a little curve, then cut on the line drawn. Okay, I think this might work. However, it is bowing in the center, and I want it to look like the dolls can go in the water. So let's cut a hole. I draw it with the marker, then carefully cut it out, making sure it is wide enough for a doll to fit through. For extra support, let's take that scrap of cardboard, trace around the opening, cut it out. I cut it slightly smaller than the outline, then add layers of cardboard to get the height that we want. I use the more coarse sand to make a glue mixture, then apply it to the cardboard. I'm hoping this will look kind of like a rock when it's dry. Now let's go back to our slope. I was gonna add more sand, but I'm thinking we should go ahead and glue down the water. So let's do that, gluing the plastic on the sides. Let's glue down that top edge as well. I'm placing a bowl underneath to just help keep it level. I'm adding hot glue along the edge and just tapping it with the glue gun to hopefully make little bubbles. Not too bad. I see the vision. It's hiding the edge of the plastic and hopefully it looks like seafoam. Now let's add more sand. And just in case our rocks don't come out right, let's take our sand and glue bowl, bend and trim it, cover it with leftover sand mixture. This is a little messy. I'm hoping it'll look like a sandbar. So let's set this aside to dry. While waiting, I made another one. This is the second canvas that came in the pack. But this time I kept it flat and I added some of that coarse sand on one end. So now we have canvas 1 and canvas 2. This is canvas 2. We're gonna let this dry and go back to canvas 1. I'm gonna put a block underneath the end to support it while we're still waiting for our sandbar to dry. I take a washable blue marker and color the end, drawing directly on the clear plastic from packaging. Then I add some Mod Podge, mix it with the marker, allowing the color to tint the glue. I take the clear Mod Podge all the way up to the top and try to fade them together. So when it dries, it'll be clear and then it gets kinda blue. I'm just using a brush to smooth out those lines, but we can also use a straw to add some ripples. My first layer of glue is almost dry, and we can see how some of the thicker spots are taking a little longer. I can barely see any blue, but sometimes at the beach the water is kind of clear close to the shore. On canvas 2, I made the water separate and I went a little heavier with the blue, and I already added white for a little seafoam. To make the seafoam, we're gonna work on that textured hot glue we added to the top. We want to make sure that the Mod Podge is pretty much dry in the area that we're working. We can add more hot glue if we want more ribbons of seafoam. Then I mix a drop of white paint and Mod Podge, brush the area where I'm working with clear Mod Podge, add the paint mixture just on the hot glue, then use air through a straw to move it. I went all the way across and it's starting to dry. Now let's go in with a little bit of white paint and just tap it on the textured hot glue. While that's drying, let's add another layer of blue. Right at the end, I color with the marker, then add a thin layer of Mod Podge. I added a little more Mod Podge right before the clear plastic to make it look like the sand is wet. But I think it's coming along nicely. Now we're just waiting for those last few spots of glue to clear up. So let's check on our water supports, which are supposed to be sandbars. I like the shape of these because they're smaller. However, I do like the color on those. Let's see how they look in the scene. This is one of the bowls. And I didn't make it to fit that opening, so there's that. Let's try the one that I did make to fit the opening. Not too bad, but I do think it should be that yellow sand color. So let's just add a little of that sand on top and allow it to dry. I did make 2, so I'm adding a little bit of that yellow sand to this one as well. And let's add a little moss to hopefully look like seaweed. I feel like we need a sea creature or two. I bought this pack of ocean minis at Michael's a while back. I saw some in the store yesterday and they were priced around $8 to $9. We got a dolphin, a shark, and other minis that are too small for our scene. But we might be able to use the baby sea turtle coming out of its egg. And maybe the starfish. I was playing around with hot glue and Mod Podge, and I think we could probably DIY one. Let's take a silicone mat. I'm using the back of a silicone mold I bought at Michael's. And let's use the hot glue to just make a star. Starting in the center and moving out to the sides. I made a couple here, and some look better than others. Once cooled, we can just pull them from the mat and paint them. I even tried making a few using colored hot glue. Let's mix a little Mod Podge and paint, then make little dots all over it to make a little starfish that we can place on our sandy supports, under the water, or on the sand. They look pretty good on canvas too as well, which is now dry and ready for the dolls. We can lay down a Barbie towel, grab our DIY bog bag that we made last year. I did see online that they're now making a miniature that is doll-sized, but it's a keychain. Then add a doll so she can enjoy a day at the beach. This canvas is 16 by 20 inches, so we can get a full body shot of the doll. I think the water turned out pretty good. We can take some beach photos, and we don't have to worry about sand getting in the doll's joints. This project took a nice amount of Mod Podge, which can get very smelly very fast, so you want to make sure to do this in a well-ventilated area. And if you wanted, I think you could skip on the straw air technique. I think you can get similar results with the brush. Since we used a canvas for our base, we can hang these on the wall when not in use. We can remove our little sand support from the scene. Carefully place a doll in the opening to make it look like she's in the water. Thank you for joining us while we made a realistic doll beach. That can also be wall art. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to ring the bell and follow us on Instagram and YouTube at MyFroggyStuff and Bella of MyFroggyStuff on Instagram. And we will see you next time. Bye!